Hello, BookTube, and I'm here with my first installment, or my first video for Hal for the Holidays. Now, Hal for the Holidays is a 3-month long celebration of the science fiction author Hal Clement. And this was began by Brandy at the Book Eclectic, and she has asked me, along with two other co-hosts, to co-host and read or reread Hal Clement, her favorite science fiction writer. Hal Clement was born in 1922, and he died in 2003. And in 1998, he was inducted into the Science Fiction Hall of Fame and was given a Science Fiction Writers of America Grand Master Award in 2000. So it was great that these honors were given to him while he was still alive, unlike many other authors. But yeah, he was born Harry Clement Stubbs, and he has a background. I'll do more about this because I have a series called, so I'm going to plug a series that I've started called The Secret Lives of Science Fiction Writers. And I'll be doing it every Friday because it's an open spot there, Friday afternoon. And I'll get more into Harry Clement Stubbs in the secret life of science fiction writers. But let's just say he had a background in science, and most of all his stories are to do with science, like plausible and logical science, and a lot of details regarding that science. And this is what fans of him like. He was never big on characterization or plot. It was more about creating real science and real aliens and not so much motivations, but for like believable alien worlds. And he succeeded that. And he is a preeminent example of the hard SF, hard science fiction writer. And you don't get too many that are harder than him for science fiction. And the idea of Hal for the Holidays is to read two books of his every month for November, 2 for December, and 2 for January. I hope to do a lot more than that. I've read probably half, if not more, of Hal Clement's work already in the past. It's more of his newer stuff that I haven't read, and quite a bit, probably a third to a half of his short stories that I have not read. So I'm hoping to do to actually do a complete read through of his work. I don't know if I'll succeed that, but that's my aim. But this month, also November, was New Worlds November, an event put on by the Bookish Bryants to celebrate science fiction in general, and shorter works of science fiction, 250 pages or less, or more so short stories, novellas, and novelettes. However, for the first week, which was terrestrial, which was the theme, I read 2 Hal Clement books. I read Needle and Through the Eye of the Needle, which was a sequel. And Needle is well, it was written in 1949, 1950, serialized. And it came out in book form probably in 61, I think, or at least in the UK, 1961. And this is the 1963 edition, Corgi edition. It's a bit rough. Now, it's got to do with a parasitic virus, basically, life form, but a benign life form, intelligent life form. And he is chasing one of his own kind through space, and they crash land on Earth. He is a detective, a policeman of his own race, and he had a host who dies on impact in the Pacific Ocean off a small island. So he's without a host, and he's like a jellyfish-like creature. that can go into other life forms and permeate through their body, and you know, and it has a host for this, but he doesn't harm the host. He actually is beneficial to the host. So he's out of his element now, especially on Earth, an unknown planet for him. And when he gets out of his spaceship underwater, he can breathe, like he can breathe the oxygen in the water. He does need oxygen, but he has to move very slowly. So he first attaches himself to a shark, which sort of isn't the best thing. But the shark beaches himself and dies. So he has to wait. Like he leaves the shark and he goes into the sand, and he waits for another host to come along. And who comes along is a 15-year-old boy named Bob, who's there on school vacation with his parents. Well, his parents live on the island because he's sent away to the United States to boarding school. So this is sort of the last playtime he has with friends. So we know the alien as the hunter, basically the hunter. And he goes into Bob. Bob doesn't know he's there because this is very difficult for the alien, the hunter, to do, because it's usually they don't force themselves onto the host. But this is dire circumstances, and he needs to find the fugitive. So, but Bob, as I say, doesn't know. He goes off to school, and there's quite detailed description of how the virus, that this being goes through Bob's body and then tries to communicate with them. And I did a video on sort of, trying to communicate with aliens. And he does it kind of interesting because he's inside the character Hunter is inside the body of Bob, and he can sort of make his eyes see things like words, because he's been in his body for about a month, so he's absorbed all the information, and he's learned how to read English, so he can write words sort of in the air for Bob, and that's how he first starts communicating. But Bob thinks he's going a bit insane with this, and he falls and he cuts his arm really badly, but the hunter seals it up so there's no real damage. But this is sort of found out that it's a very bad cut, and Bob is not acting normal, so he's sort of sent home being ill. But he starts, he realizes, and he starts communicating with the hunter, and the hunter tells him what his mission is to get this fugitive, but they don't know where he is. So this is months after they've crashed. So the trail is quite cold, but they have to go back to the island, and that's where Bob is sent anyway, because he's ill, and then he starts going to school there. There's a lot of faffing around in the story. It's there is a lot of filler for it. It's a juvenile story because it's a juvenile character with a lot of juvenile shenanigans going around. And they keep trying to do something and they never quite get there. And there's all this faffing around with a boat. And then finally they track down their quarry, the fugitive, and they kill it, basically. They kill him because there's no way, and so it basically ends with the alien still in Bob, and the alien can't go anywhere. He can't go home. His ship, the ships are completely damaged. So he sort of sets up home in Bob, and that's where it ends. And but at that point, there are other people that know, or at least the doctor knows. And yeah, like I say, Hal Clement isn't always the best at writing characters or situations, because it's like the doctor, when the doctor finds out, it's just like, oh, okay, let's see what we can do here then with this. It is like he just accepts it so easily, and even the kid accepts everything so easily. that I don't think quite matches sort of what the reality was, what people's views. I mean, how their reaction would be to something like this. Um, and also too, it's funny reading this kind of stuff because it's obviously, well, it's set in the 50s, and there is it's sort of the same sort of generational thing of how teenagers did things as when I grew up. So it didn't seem foreign to me, where Bob would go out swimming, by himself, sort of, or with friends. They would do things. They would go out on a boat. They would do all this kind of stuff all by themselves. Today, you would never have a 15-year-old, or parents generally, allowing their kids to do the things that Bob does, and the other kids there, which was kind of interesting to see. But as I say, he shows Bob doing like teenage things to a certain extent, but he doesn't really get into the mindset of a teenager. And as I say, it's well, like, any thoughts or mention of sex in here is non-existent, and for a 15-year-old boy, well, it's not really real. But I can, you can't put that in if you're wanting to make a juvenile story. But it's really enjoyable. It's like the dynamic between the alien and Bob, and the way Hal Clement describes the biological aspects of it, and he tries to do it very, very accurately. There was, like, he did get the name wrong, like I think he called it a symbiote or symbiote or something like that. He had the name sort of incorrect a little bit, but all the other details, I think, ring true. At least they ring true while you're reading it. And it is a fabulous story. I won't give away sort of the ending of where or how they catch the fugitive, the quarry, because that sort of, and because they know that the other alien is in somebody else, but chances are that he hasn't made contact with them. He's hiding, and he's just biding his time for whatever. We never really know what the motives are of the quarry. We take it for granted that the hunter is telling the truth about that he's a murderer, and that he's a policeman. And the interesting thing is, while you're reading it, you could think that, well, is it the other way around? Who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? But it's not that complicated. See, that's the thing. It's not complicated. And Hal Clement would not make something like that complicated. But then later, he came, I think this is 1978. Yeah, 1978 is Through the Eye of the Needle, a sequel. That's a really fabulous cover. This is a very, very psychedelic cover, that's for sure. I don't know if they say who did the cover on here. I'd have to look it up, and I haven't. It doesn't say, or I don't see it here anywhere. It doesn't say. And for this one, this is a Del Rey. That was a Corgi, British edition. There's a map in here. Oh, cover art by H.R. Van Dongen. And it's quite cool. Now, as I say, it's written in 1978. So we jump ahead almost 10 years. Like, many years later, Bob is just finishing university. He went through for engineering of some sort because he wants to get a job because it was paid for. On the island where he lives with his father, they produce an oil of some sort from vegetation. It's sort of mentioned there's big vat. So the company had sort of sent him through school on the proviso that when he's done, he works for the company, and they pay for all his books, and they've set up a library on the island. And he brings all the books back, and it goes into the library. So that was one of the other things, that there is a library in here anyway. But yeah, so he's in his early 20s and he comes back, but he's Bob is beginning to be ill, and the hunter realizes that there's something that he's doing or not doing that is causing this. But the doctors can't figure it out, and their doctor friend, who's aware of him now, his parents are aware of him, of Hunter, and now at this point, Hunter can talk to him in his ear. So Hunter feels that the only way that he can help Bob is to contact his own people and have their doctors look at him and do something. But it's been 10 years and nothing. He hasn't done anything. But they sort of figure, well, there probably was a mission sent to look for them, and they need to find the spacecraft that crashed with their quarry in. And again, the plot is back and forth, lots of faffing around trying to find it. And then, somebody tries to murder Bob, all these things. And it's not, the plot and the intricacies of the plot are not that good, but it's a good enough story. And it's fun because Bob, he's older, wiser, and he has more help, and there's even more that sort of gets into the fold. And at this point, he has a little sister as well that's about 5 or 6 years old, which causes a little bit of a problem. Like, she's just sort of incidental to the story, but yeah, and so they sort of think that possibly his race has actually been there already and left a message, because they do find a component from the spaceship that happens to be in the library, and there's a story behind that, which is sort of implausible in many ways, but hey ho. And they also start thinking, well, the quarry may not have been killed. They thought he was killed, but because there's been threats on, and a serious threat on Bob's life, like he got skewered through his heart, like with a long piece of metal, and if the hunter wasn't there, he would have died, broke his arm and everything. But he survives, and as it turns out that there are aliens, more of Hunter's species that is there waiting for him, or waiting for them both, and so it has a happy ending. But again, it's, even though Bob's an adult, it still has that juvenile feel to it, because he is still an adolescent, even though he's in his early 20s. He's very adolescent in attitude, the way and his the way he goes about things, his relationship with a young woman is very adolescent. But yeah, it's not as good as the first one, because the first one relied mostly on the communication and the introduction of a virus, a symbiotic virus that's in a human, and with hosts. And that was very interesting of how he did that. But that's sort of like, well, we already know that. We've been there. We know it. So what else are you going to do? And then it's just sort of a very light mystery story, in a sense, a detective story. And that's what the first one is too. It's a detective story to a certain extent. But this one is much, much lighter because you don't have anything else. There's really not much left with the science that he's showing. But it's still interesting. You find out what's happened, and it's sort of these are spoilers to a certain extent, but I won't go into too many details. But it's like at the end, it's opened up that humans may begin to realize, or at least on a small scale, that there are there's aliens out there, that this is first contact. and more because of the the power that they can have and the healing powers for things, because it looks like the hunter has helped a few people, I think, and especially his father, Bob's father, when he was ill. So, and there's it opens up the possibility where you start thinking, which was kind of nice, because you're going, well, what happens after the story? Like, what happens following everything in here? Like the first one just sort of ends that it's going to be secret, that the hunter is inside Bob, and he'll go and he'll have the dual knowledge of this alien that will help him through life, which it does. It's clear in the second one that this is happening, but a little less so than you may think. But then at the end, as I say, that it opens it up for a lot more. And as far as I know, he never wrote anything else, even a short story on the subject at all. So anyway, so those are the two that I've read so far. And I'm not sure what I know what I'm going to read next. I'm hoping before the end of the month I get to read Cycle of Fire, which is, I've got a few copies because I bought a collection, and I'll read this one, which is in really rough shape. Cycle of Fire, which was published 1957, I guess it was written, and this is a Corgi edition, published 1966. Cool cover. It's a short one too. It's like 170 pages. What does it say here? It's about a planet and something around a dwarf and a blue giant. When the red dwarf, I can't really read it because it's tore off there. But anyway, it looks like it's extraterrestrial. So, but anyway, that's installment one. And do watch out for. This will be going up Wednesday. So on Friday, there will be my life, the secret life of science fiction writers, which will be Hal Clement. It's not really secret, but it's sort of about his life outside of science fiction. That's what this series is, and I'll be doing some more popular writers and less popular. And Hal Clement is a less popular writer around today. He's always been known, but that's the purpose of this Hal for the Holidays, is to get more interest in Hal Clement, especially on BookTube, and it's going really well. So again, I want to thank Brandy for asking me to be part of this, because I've always enjoyed his writing. I've enjoyed him in a different way than I do other writers. But yeah, and the other co-hosts, which I'll list down below, are Scott Bryant from the Bookish Bryants and Scott Danielson, and I'll leave their details all down below. Thank you, BookTube.